The 2024 presidential race is turning into a battle between career politicians versus unconventional candidates. President Biden is out in California for a second day and hanging with bigwig donors and turning a blind eye to the state's decaying liberal cities. But his top Democratic challenger, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., is doing the exact opposite. He's walking the streets of San Francisco to get a firsthand account of the homeless crisis.
We could solve the problem of homelessness on the federal level by providing homeless vouchers, Section 8 vouchers to poor people, and we ought to be doing that. It's more important than funding wars. It's more important than funding overseas adventures. We need to take care of Americans.
And Republican Vivek Ramaswamy is following a similar playbook. He is visiting a drug-infested part of Philadelphia.
Just arriving in Kensington, pulling up on a street corner here. We're already seeing a lot of drug use on the streets. Old manufacturing buildings that have now been converted into wastelands. We're not running to lead a political party. We're running to lead a country here.
All right, Dan, I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
RFK has visited San Francisco recently, went down to see the border. I think we talked about it last week. How is this style of doing things different and compared to what Biden is doing, which is high-fiving everybody at fundraisers?
Yeah. So I do feel that with the Hunter Biden announcements today that the Biden campaign is getting serious. I don't necessarily think that going to campaign events where you're shaking hands and doing, basically no rallies or anything like that is a surprise from an incumbent president. He's got to go out there and raise a lot of money. They're a little bit behind in fundraising, so they're trying to catch up. That all makes sense to me. However, if you want to make a difference and you want to make a splash, you do something like what RFK Jr. and Vivek Ramaswamy have done. Even DeSantis went to the border. All of this makes a ton of sense if you're trying to, get attention, especially in a crowded GOP primary. But on the Democratic side of things, this issue of homelessness is so big. And if you are the president of the United States, your job is to make big decisions and solve big problems. You should want to do that. Talking about climate change in California might get you some money from the tech CEOs. It is not going to get you the answers that you need to help solve a problem that's biggest in California, but growing all across the country. As I don't even know if what RFK Jr. is suggesting would actually work. Does Section 8 housing vouchers to some of these people out here, is that going to get them off the street? I actually don't know if that's the right answer. I think a lot of them have mental health problems where that wouldn't even be something that they could handle. But from a campaign perspective, I think it makes a lot of sense for them to get some earned media attention. Plus, a lot of people are getting their news and their information about the campaign on their phone. Yeah. So those types of videos make a lot of sense.
Yeah, Greg, I saw you shake your head with the housing voucher concept that I think it's Vivek thinks is important to resolving the homelessness issue.
Yeah, it was actually it was RFK who brought it up, and I admire him. I think he's the most persuasive candidate out there. But I agree with you. I don't think these are not families on the street. I mean, if anybody who spends their time, I go up 6th Avenue every day. You're not going to hand these people a voucher and they're going to return to this happy, leave it to Beaver stability. You're talking about people who daily reject other people's help, right? The drug addicts, the mentally ill, the criminally deranged that are there. You hand them a voucher, and if they can't sell that for drugs, they'll hit you with it. So I think that what would help RFK would probably be to hook up with Michael Schellenberger, who's been on top of the homeless situation in California for some time and has a lot of great ideas there. I think RFK is a very complicated, intensely persuasive person, but there was some stuff on Rogan that I felt was troubling. I mean, and I think that a really good way to debate him would be to find out what the difference between the claims that he finds most important and the ones that are somehow like recreational. Like, he believes in this sort of thing, but, he starts talking about Wi-Fi radiation. That feels like a recreational belief, something to ponder, like UFOs. And I would really like to, as somebody that really thinks he's really onto something, I think he needs to delineate between some of the things that he believes truly are happening and some things that he's exploring in his brain on Rogan.
Jessica, Americans like transparency, and I think RFK is the embodiment of transparency because, whether it's his going on Rogan or just doing these little videos from his phone, whereas Joe Biden is the guy who's got to read from the teleprompter or blow through a fundraiser. I mean, how do you think that's going to benefit?
Well,
people with real jobs and the most important job in the world often use a teleprompter. So past presidents, ones that you've liked and ones you didn't like, use teleprompters. RFK is not someone right now who's out running the world. He's trying to get that job. And frankly, he's putting out a lot of stuff that Greg said, maybe we need to know, how serious are you about Wi-Fi giving us leaky brain? But I don't think that anyone with even an ounce of conspiracy theory in them should get near the Oval Office. And there was so much in the Rogan interview. We had the Wi-Fi causing cancer, 5G damaging your human DNA. He's someone who believes that Bill Gates is trying to microchip all of us as a tool of mass surveillance. He thinks chemicals in the water are turning boys transgender. And then if you think okay, well, maybe those are his recreational beliefs. Let's talk about the numbers that he threw out about the budgets. He said we spent $16 trillion on the lockdowns. Not true. $8 trillion to Ukraine so far. The entire defense budget, what we're going to spend over a decade, is $8 trillion. The man is pulling nonsense out of everywhere constantly. And I have no idea what his platform is. If you went back to what he was like as an environmental lawyer, and he said, I'm the climate guy, I think that could resonate a lot more with someone who believes in what the Democratic Party stands for. But he's just spouting Republican, frankly, deep web Republican, GOP, QAnon, whatever it is, conspiracy theories.
Thank God Dems don't fall for conspiracies. Whew.
Jesse.
Oh, that Pizzagate, right?
No, but spending 4
ahead,
years
Jesse.
on Russian collusion and a P-tape. Do you imagine what that did to this country?
Yeah, tore us apart.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we should put the Wi-Fi's giving you cancer.
No, I
guy
actually
in the
brought
White
up.
House.
I actually brought up that point.
There's a lot of stuff.
Don't argue with
Anyway,
me about it. I brought it up. Jeez, Jessica.
Jesse, the Wall Street Journal
I'm the
says that
worst.
no one is looking forward to 2024 election. A rematch of two guys battled between two old men. And apparently they say, is this how the younger voters feel?
The younger voters like watching someone get their hands dirty. And whether that was Trump going to these hollowed out industrial towns in 2016 and saying that these stupid trade deals bankrupted our Midwest, that's kind of what RFK Jr. is doing without the crowds. You go to the border. You go to San Francisco with the homeless. Trump went to East Palestine. Trump went to the border. DeSantis went to the border. Ramaswamy went to North Philly. That pays off with voters because you can learn more from talking to a homeless guy than you can talking to a donor at a San Francisco fundraiser like Joe Biden's doing. Joe Biden's been to Ukraine. Other than that, he drove an electric car once. He hasn't really shown the ability.
He drove an 18-wheeler, too.
Excuse me. You have to, in order to govern America, you have to experience America, the good, the bad, the ugly. Crime, homelessness, narcotics, the border, these are flashpoints. You have to physically go there and tap into that emotion. Talk to an addict, a nurse, a refugee. Breathe that air. Bring the press corps to breathe that same air. They'll cover you differently when you interact in a compassionate way. And maybe they'll cover you in a different way, knowing where you've been. Joe Biden has not tapped into that kind of emotion. These other candidates are doing it, and voters respect that.
Okay. All right. Coming up, brand new details on the frantic search.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.